Hello there beautiful, how are you doing today? My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now, I know that I tried kind of condensing everything into a week's worth of content into one video, but over the course of time I've kind of discovered that that's not really working out for me. I did it so that I could make more content for other things, but realistically I haven't been doing that, so I'm now going to be going back to doing each video on each banner as it comes out and each kind of covered video as that video comes out, so you can enjoy more frequent Dissidia videos from me for the time being, certainly at the very least. But today we're going to be talking about Raijin and Kadaj with Raijin's Intersecting Wills, which comes out tomorrow. So if you'd like to know more about those two and the event that comes with them, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Don't forget to check all of my social media links in the description box below. Over on Twitch, you can find me streaming Dissidia, Opera Omnia, FF14, FF7, all sorts of good Final Fantasy goodness. And while I've come back to what I'm doing originally for Dissidia on YouTube, I do have other plans when it comes to other content. So don't worry, I haven't abandoned the idea completely. As a matter of fact, next week, next Thursday, in fact, is my 34th birthday. So I wanted to celebrate with all of you guys by doing something on Twitch that has been requested from me for a long time as something we did once before, and I couldn't think of a better time to do it. So next Thursday at 9:30 AM BST on my 34th birthday, we're going to be doing another Final Fantasy quiz, and this has always done very well for us in the past. We had a really good time with the last couple ones we've done. All my questions are updated. It's actually the biggest quiz we've done so far, so if you'd like to come in and join with that, then it would be lovely to have you, as it'd be lovely to celebrate my birthday with all of you lovely viewers. Over on Patreon, I do always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a brand new video, and today that person is going to be Blood Otaku, who is a returning patron. A massive thank you goes out to you, having supported me since the FFTCG days and on Ultimate here as well, and giving me the chance to draw somebody from Vagrant Story, which makes me so happy and warm and fuzzy inside, so thank you very much for that indeed. And of course, don't forget to check out all of the other wonderful content creators and resources out there for Opera Omnia, as well as anything that I'm doing. So of course, first things first, let's talk about this banner. So on the banner, it's going to be another chance to get Snow's BT. We're going to see Raijin, his brand new kit, his LD, all the reworks, all the goodness, and then Kadaj is going to be returning with his kit, and he's getting reworked pretty heavily as well. So we're going to start by taking a look at Kadaj. So big shout out to Leo Bob and Mediu, who more recently does the translations over on Reddit. Thank you very much for that. Kadaj is getting reworked to basically deal a boatload more damage. If you haven't used him before, he has a stacking debuff that has to be on a single target. You have to continuously hit the same target, otherwise the debuff shifts between characters, and it's not something you can apply to more than one. But at maximum stacks, he does a follow-up attack which has now been reworked to do a lot more damage. So Fixation, which is the debuff that he gets from his, from all of the stuff that he gets from this, means that he's going to be able to sap all of an enemy's brave gains instead of half of them like he did originally. And at max stacks, he's going to be dealing double HP dumps with his Geophagy follow-up, which comes from having access to that. Geophagy being the follow-up attack from having 5 levels of fixation. And then he gets more HP dumps on the attacks themselves as well. So Mayhem and Volley both get increases in their HP dumps, 3 for both of those. The EX is now going to do 4 HP dumps, and you start the round with your EX fully charged up, and you start with the buff from his Mother's Casket, buff from his LD as well. And the LD itself has now been increased to have 6 HP dumps on it, which at max stacks of fixation means you're going to be getting 8 attacks off, or 8 HP dumps off of a combination of that and the Geophagy follow-up. So his damage goes up significantly with his C90 across the board to make him actually a fairly competitive damage dealer, which is something he's never really been able to claim before. He's always been very quirky by having the gold debuffs, like any debuffs that he inflicts are gold framed, which means they can't be removed by the enemy through cleansing. And this is relevant as well, especially when it comes to Dimensions and Transcendence 9, which asks for golden debuffs by way of either Sephiroth, Laguna, or of course Kadaj, and giving him a sphere that inflicts a debuff such as Tidus, or most importantly for DET9 at least, Laguna, means that the debuffs you get from them are also going to be gold framed, which means that he's able to inflict more of them at a quicker pace, and it just works very well with what he does. So Kadaj definitely in the best position he's ever been in before, and there are very, very good uses for him going forwards as well. Would I pull for him now if I didn't have him already? Depends. DET9 is a bit of a pain in the backside, and Kadaj can absolutely help with that. So if you're not planning on using Sephiroth for that, because his BT rework and BT Plus comes around at the same time, then Kadaj is a very strong alternative to that. As a matter of fact, he's the character that I plan on using for that particular event. Okay, so now let's discuss Raijin. And Raijin has a lot of hype around him, basically relating to his LD call ability, and there's a very, very good reason for that. But I think that there is a misconception that that's the only use that Raijin has, and I'm glad to say, in fact, he's actually not bad in your party either, because that LD is still present in your party, and Raijin's had a really weirdly consistently strong journey in Dissidia since his EX debut, so it's really nice to see. So he gets reworked, so he gets increased HP dumps on everything he does, with Fist Plus in particular being a 5 HP dumping attack, which is pretty big for him, considering the fact that he has attack-wide party-wide attack auras, physical attack auras, HP regen as well. He's another character that is an offensive character with support capabilities that happens to have HP regen in his kit, which is lovely. And then Raijin Special, which is his Thunder Imperiling move, also has increased HP dumps on it as well, and allows him to go into his Thunder mode, which isn't really anything except for the fact you get the plus versions of all of his skills, and you get a nice crackly effect around his character now. His EX actually gets a really nice rework as well. For starters, he has 40% speed up, which is a big deal for him in combination with one of the other aspects he's gotten onto his kit, because Raijin was always extremely slow, and while he's not the fastest character in the game now, this definitely helps him out quite a big deal. So Raijin Pulverizer is now a 4 HP dumping attack that you start the match with. You get the EX off the bat, and what this does is it gives him the Thunder Peel buff, which basically is a stacking buff that every turn he gets an increase on the stacks, and at 3 he changes his HP attack into Lightning Discharge, which is Lightning Discharge Plus originally, but has now been upgraded to Plus Plus. Now, this also is the source of his party HP regen and also Thunder Enchant as well, so that's also a really good shout as well, but it does mean that he's going to be restricted out of Thunder Absorb content later down the line. But the Lightning Discharge itself was always very strong because it was a guaranteed paralysis every 3 turns. Now, this is an even bigger deal because now it has double HP dumps, which is lovely, but it's also an instant free turn for Raijin, which is massive for him because it means he can start getting his stacks up quicker, he can start just doing more stuff, it mitigates the speed problem he has. Really, really good increase for Raijin. Now, his LD is one of the most important pulls you could probably make for the foreseeable future, and it is very, very powerful. So his LD is a 4 HP dumping attack, AoE, full HP, lovely, gives a healing buff, and then also puts a debuff on the enemy, which is don't lay a finger on my friend, you know. So this is an HP damage taken up, so it's an increased damage output for you. It also makes it so the enemy has 100% attack down, can't deal HP damage, and more importantly, probably than either of the above, can't inflict debuffs. So if you think of this as Reno's Pyramid debuff, but it's for 2 turns and not 1, you kind of can see where I'm going with that. It's an extremely powerful thing to have access to, especially when you consider enemies that like to do attacks on their HP thresholds, and luckily this particular event is a great example of why that's applicable, because they'll do the attack but it doesn't tick down their durations on their debuff, so you can keep this going for as long as you need to if you're bullying the enemies into not taking turns themselves. So and even in a pinch or for any other time as well, when you know an attack is coming, having Raijin to be able to do that at any given point is a huge benefit, and combining that with his paralysis as well, he is a crowd control master. And the thing with Raijin as well is that his LD call also inflicts that debuff, so it means that you have this in your back pocket at any point in the game. And I know people turn around sometimes and say to me, but I'm not going to pull just for an LD call. Time and time again, whenever I've mentioned LD calls that are really important to pull, such as previously characters like Kurasame or now Raijin, it's worth its weight in gold, and the number of applications that you can use this particular LD call in, I would say he is one of the most important pulls you could make in this era of the game and for the foreseeable future. And luckily, he's actually not as bad in your party as people think he is either. So let's quickly now go over the event as well. So for Raijin's Intersecting Wills, we'll be fighting against Joesephyr and Cerberus. Now, once again, big shout outs to DissidiaCompanion.com for providing this information. So the main gimmick with these two is that they like to jump their turns very frequently, or at least at HP thresholds. So Joesephyr at under 90%, so you've got to be quick off the mark to prepare for this, and at under 50% HP, he will automatically inflict his debuffs, like the ones that we've been used to using, so Foul and Scars of Destruction, meaning you can't gain Bravery through damage or Brave gains, so you're gonna want some method of immunity to debuffs throughout this fight, and then he follows it up with a nasty AoE HP attack, so you want to protect yourself from that as well. Now, for obvious reasons, Raijin is very good here because he makes it so that none of that stuff happens and you don't really have to worry about it at all. But there are other options that you can use for this, like Reno, or even characters like Arciela or Lena to help mitigate certain aspects of those attacks. But you could also get around this by just healing through it. But obviously, the Scars of Destruction debuff is the one you want to be avoiding. And then the Cerberus is the enemy that has the Lufenia Orb here, which asks for the target to not be able to act, so paralysis, confusion, etc. Or they take more HP damage due to a debuff. Now, there are 100 ways of doing that last bit. Raijin is obviously what's asked for here for the same reasons, but taking increased HP damage due to a debuff is obviously can be done by Kurasame Call, can be done by Irvin Call, Fran Call, anything that you can think of really to do that. So you shouldn't have to worry about the orb too much, particularly if you're concerned about just delaying the enemy to a point of no return. But bear in mind that under 90%, 60% and 30% HP, Cerberus will warp its turn forward, and that's also going to make it so that he's taking like extra turns and ticking that Lufenia Orb down, which is lethal if it goes off. So realistically, delay is very good here. Freya is actually extremely good here because Cerberus's recast attack is actually very powerful, as is Cypher's Bloodfest Plus. So having access to party-wide last stand through Freya while she's healing the party and not being present, very, very powerful. If you have a damage mitigator like Snove BT, he's obviously going to do very well, or Zac, anything like that. Layla may not get you around the guaranteed Bloodfest Plus, but she'll get you around everything else, so she's going to be very good here too. There's lots of options that you have access to for this particular fight. Just keep in mind those HP thresholds so you're not suffering from these threshold attacks before you're ready to do so, and you'll be fine. So now let's go into Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard about these particular banners. So once again, a massive thank you to all of my patrons for their votes and their comments. As always, your thoughts are extremely valuable and allow me to showcase that more people than just me have feelings about banners before they come out. So going into the numbers for Raijin's banner, 39% of people have said yes, they're going to be using gems, or the thwarpage there. 48% have said they're going to be using 100 or more tickets. 3% said less than 100 tickets, and only 10% said no thank you. So for me, I'm going to be using tickets, which is crazy because I know that I'm sitting there going, yes, you want this. The only reason for that is because I have an abundance of tickets right now and I'm actively trying to save gems where possible. So will I crack at a certain number of tickets and go into gems? Probably, and you'll probably all read me to filth about it later. But I want to kind of reserve gems where I can, and because I'm after the LD here, I can try and play the law of averages. But would I recommend this character to everybody? Yes, I absolutely would. So let's go into some comments. Pale Raider says, gems. Any excuse to make life easier for me will be taken in the highest regard. Raijin's LD debuff achieves this and then some. I heard he's good in the party as well. You've managed to live without Kadaj until this point that I wouldn't go chasing him here, to be honest. Personally, I've already got his gear in Blue Doom, so I'll definitely be using him somewhere as I'm determined to not let his optimized sphere setup go to waste. If you're missing Golden debuffs and still interested in having that kind of niche, Sephiroth rework is soon and with a good deal more potency. Happy pulling to all. I will just say, there is one thing that Kadaj can do that Sephiroth can't, and that's have access to an E-sphere, which is to say that he is able to deal a wider variety of debuffs to multiple enemies, and this will come in extremely handy during Dimensions and Transcendence 9, which is where he excels most. And as a damage dealer, he is actually very potent. Am I wanting to use Sephiroth? Am I wanting to use Kadaj? Yes, but I love them both, so I'm probably going to find ways to use them anyway. But there are things that Kadaj can do that Sephiroth can't. Although Sephiroth does have a BT, which obviously elevates him in terms of actual damage dealing. Cobalt Zork says, this is one of the banners I'll be using gems on throughout Snow's batch. Raijin has always been good at offering defensive options through his stack-based paralysis HP variant, and now he gets a really solid debuff from his LD that just neuters a lot of content and should help fill the gaps his paralysis can't cover on account of how glacially slow he is. I also never pulled for Kadaj before, so it would be a great pick up here too, and a great pick for one of the upcoming DET stages where gold frame debuffs are needed. Yes, that is a good point as well with Kadaj. The DET stage that we're talking about asks specifically for gold framed debuffs, so your only options for that are going to be Laguna, which is attached to his BT effect, so not ideal, Sephiroth, which is attached to his LD, but it lasts more than long enough, and Kadaj. So those are your only real options to do that, so consider that before you go in on Kadaj or DET9. And then again, he is slow. Raijin is still really slow comparatively to a lot of characters, but his buffs have helped him quite a lot here. The fact that he has a 40% speed up is good, and the fact that he has an instant turn rate on his Thunder Discharge is incredibly useful if you're looking to use him in the main party. Are you pulling for him to use him in your main party rather than the LD call? No, the LD call is the primary reason to be getting him. But I think you'd be surprised at how useful he might be in your party as well. And then finally, Kellen says a debuff in one package that inflicts HP down 100%, HP resist down 20%, attack down 100%, and no debuffs. Yes, this debuff is a part of Raijin LD call. All that is reason enough for me to pull with gems. Raijin call will be very useful well into Shinryu era. As I've said, you want this, and if you don't, that's fair, but it does make life easier. That's very, very fair. Like, I do think that there are people who are probably not necessarily going to want to pull for Raijin LD, and that's totally fine. I can only give recommendations based on how I feel about a character and the research that I've done, but you may feel differently, and you may feel you don't need it. But I do think that many powerful defensive options in one thing that you can bring to any event is worth its weight in gold. So big question time, should you be pulling for Raijin or Kadaj? And honestly, in the case of Raijin, at the very least, the answer is a resounding yes. Kadaj is also very good as well. The only real problems I have with Kadaj at this point is that he doesn't have a BT, which means that a lot of players, if you're looking for a character that is there to do damage, which realistically is what Kadaj is there to do, you might find it easier just to take a character with a BT on them. So for DET9, Sephiroth also does gold debuffs and has a BT, which means that overall his damage is probably going to end up being higher, and he's less awkward to use than Kadaj, because Kadaj's fixation debuff, which procs his geophagy follow-ups, can only be applied to one enemy at a time. So in multi-enemy fights, you might find that to be a bit more awkward than you might like. But his damage is massively increased with his C90 upgrades. 8 HP dumps off of his LD, as long as the geophagy buff is there, is nice. It's really nice. And the fact that his fixation debuff steals all of an enemy's brave gains and not just half anymore is actually really valuable, because taking half of 20 million isn't going to save you. Taking all of it will. So that's something that I really like about Kadaj's changes. And I've always really liked Kadaj and tried to kind of push him into content he probably didn't need to be in. But now it doesn't feel like so much of a push anymore, because his damage is competitive, even though he doesn't have a BT. Raijin, on the other hand, the debuff from the LD is too good to mention. It's just phenomenal. You get your offensive buff, so you get 20% increased HP damage on that enemy. They deal no damage for HP, they deal pretty much no damage for bravery, and they can't inflict debuffs. That is something that before now you would have to do multiple call abilities to get all of that, and it's normally more easily removed than this by now. But the fact that this lasts for 2 turns, and it's consolidated all on one character's LD call, means you have so much more room to do other stuff. So it's just fantastic. And like I said earlier, Raijin's not the greatest character to come out to go in your main party, but he's certainly quite good. Like, you've got quite a lot of leeway with him. He is slow. Like, even though he's had his speed increases, he is slow. But he's not as slow as he was, and having consistent paralysis and HP regen, some party auras, they're not the biggest party auras in the world, but Thunder Enchant in Peril is nice, provided you're not against the Thunder Lockout content, and honestly, I can't recommend it enough. Like, I see people in JP to this day using Raijin's LD call, and that's gotta have some merit. So that's actually it for today's video. Like I said, I'm now separating my Should You Pull videos back into being 4 individual banners, so you can expect to see more slightly shorter videos, because that was a big reason as to why I wanted to cut this down, because filming a video that was like it was approaching an hour long per video. So hopefully this cuts it down a bit more digestible, because that's what I've always wanted it to be, and I'll just kind of go with the flow as things happen and as time progresses, and try and film stuff in blocks, because that's been something that's been taught to me by doing everything in the week. So thank you very much for watching, and you can look forward to my next video on Dissidia, which is going to be about Cisne and the Safer Sephiroth fight, which is one that I'm very much looking forward to. And leave a comment down below and let me know if you like this format better than the once a week format, and let me know as well if you're pulling for Raijin or Kadaj or both or neither. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notification of any future videos I might be making, and I will see you next time. Take care everyone, bye now.